Welcome back to Matchday Live Extra on Transfer Deadline Day, where the summer transfer window has now officially closed. I've always wanted to do that. Let's take a look then at all the deals that have gone through today on Deadline Day, where there have been selected ones on this list here, just to run through the biggest deal of the window being Anthony, the striker who has signed for Manchester United from Ajax. Also on that list, Akanji joining Manchester City from Dortmund. Leicester City signing their first outfield player of the window on deadline day, defender Wout Faes from Reims for £17 million. We've got a move from one Premier League team to another with Dendoncker joining Aston Villa from Wolves. Also James Garner, a youngster from Manchester United's academy, joining Frank Lampard's Everton side. This one's just recently gone through. Vinicius from Benfica has joined Fulham for just over £4 million. Nottingham Forest, believe it or not, have made another signing today. I think that makes it 19 in their summer spending, which is a crazy number, and we'll talk a bit about that in a moment. Willy Bolly joining Forest from Wolves. Also, Idrissa Gueye back at Everton from PSG. We'll get the thoughts of Julien Laurens on that shortly, being a PSG fan. Willian is also back in the Premier League. This time, though, he joins Fulham. And also, Arthur has joined Liverpool. This deal just got over the line in the last 30 minutes or so. He's joined on loan from Juventus to boost Liverpool's midfield. And Kurzawa from PSG has joined Fulham on loan as well. So, really, the one big deal that I think everyone's waiting to see if it does get over the line is Emeric Aubamyang, who is reportedly on the way back to London, but this time to West London, not North London, and to Chelsea from Barcelona. This is a loan deal. The window is closed, so why is it that this can still potentially go through, Jules?
Because if the two clubs, especially the English clubs, have sent all the paperwork to the Premier League on time, then they need to check it. So as long as it was all sent by email before the deadline, then the Premier League can extend, if you want, the window a little bit for the time for them to check everything, to check that it's all in order, and to be registered and validated, if you want, a little bit later on, around the midnight or quarter to midnight, half past midnight, for example. This is possible. We've seen that in the past before.
Well, Chelsea are the biggest spenders in the summer window, and looking at the business they've done, they've spent big money on a couple of players in particular. One of those only going through yesterday, Wesley Fofana, who has finally signed for Chelsea from Leicester for just under £70 million. Marc Cucurella also joined from Brighton for £55 million, and Raheem Sterling joining for under £50 million from Manchester City as well. Karen, it's a lot of money to spend. What have you made of Chelsea's business under the new owner?
I think it's a seller's market for the club, so they've had to pay the going rate. I think Fofana, Cucurella and Sterling are all proven in the Premier League, and I think that's what's really, really important. I think Koulibaly, a lot of people have been after them for a while, and the other three signings are future signings as well, so they've kind of gone for proven and for the future. So, but they've had to pay the going rate, and at the moment it's a high market.
We haven't seen the best start for Chelsea this season in the Premier League, though, Michael. What have you made of their business, and is it just going to take a bit of time for all the players to gel?
Well, I'm quite surprised at their business, I must admit. An awful lot of players and an awful lot of money. What are we talking there? Just under 250 million. And then there's Aubameyang possibly to be added to that list as well.
Good maths.
Yeah, thanks. The manager's been there a good while. I mean, I didn't think he'd be thinking, we've got to, have this much surgery on the team. And obviously the owner's come in and he's been very happy to splash the cash as well. So interesting. They've had a bit of a mixed start. They still have problems. Do they want to play with a striker? Do they want to play with these false nines that they try? They've had strikers in the past, bought one and sent one back to Italy in Lukaku. But they're still searching for that right person. It's been a problem area, hasn't it, for years and years, that centre-forward for Chelsea. I mean, Drogba was just unbelievable, and I'm going back a long time. You think of the great players since that were great and then have struggled as a number 9 for Chelsea. It's unbelievable. And they're still searching for one. So, but it's there's some good players in there, but they've spent an awful lot of money.
Yeah, Pierre-Emerick Aubamyang obviously being talked about as solving those issues that they're having up front, Jules. Explain Barcelona and the situation they're in and why Pierre-Emerick Aubamyang moving back to the Premier League is a good thing for him, for Barcelona and for Chelsea.
This is really a deal that I think makes sense for everyone. I think Barcelona have signed Robert Lewandowski, so Aubameyang was really the number 2 option. And if Lewandowski doesn't get injured, he never plays. Really, it's as simple as that. Barcelona needs some money to be able to register a player like Marcos Alonso, who we expect is doing the opposite journey, if you want, and goes to Barcelona. We saw Jules Koundé being registered really, really late. So they need the money. And for Chelsea, as we said, they need a striker. Whether Aubameyang can fit in straight away, where clearly Thomas Tuchel is still looking for the best formation and system and how to play with this team. It might take him a bit of time, but if you create chances for him, it would be a very good finisher for you.
It's interesting because we all know about how Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang left the Premier League from Arsenal, and there was a bit of fallout there. So will he be reluctant to come back to the Premier League?
I don't think so. I think he feels at home in England, especially after, unfortunately for him, what happened to him and his family last week when the house was attacked by burglars and you know, it got really ugly. I think he wanted to get out of Barcelona, and rightly so. But the Premier League is where he's always felt really good. Yes, he finished badly at Arsenal, but before that, he scored loads of goals for them. He was very happy. He'd worked with Tuchel before, of course, at Dortmund.
Yeah.
Not that ended well, but before the bad ending, it was really good between them as well. So I think they'll be looking forward to working again together.
Well, if he does join Chelsea, Karen, Thomas Tuchel is going to have a job on his hands, keeping all his attacking players happy. I mean, they've got so many players that he can play with that he's going to have to try and fit into just a few spaces in that starting 11.
Well, that's why he's paid the big bucks to manage all those players. But they haven't really done it, though, as a striker. I think top goal scorer was Mason Mount with 11. Last season was Jorginho with 7, who was the penalty taker. And they need a number 9. It didn't work out with Lukaku. And those other players are number 10s or creators, but they're not the finished product that they have now. So Aubameyang's probably a stopgap for a 1 year, 2 year to go and find the proper striker that they're after. And the rest of the players, actually, he doesn't need to keep them happy. They need to perform better and knock on the door to him and say, you should be playing me. At the moment, the manager doesn't have to keep him up because they're not doing what he needs them to do. They need to up their game. Maybe with Aubameyang coming in, they'll be able to find him more and have a striker they can suit. But I think they just got to train hard and get their heads down.
Ironically, we're talking about the difficulties that Chelsea are having up top. But when Thomas Tuchel has been interviewed after the defeats this season, he's actually talking about their defence being the biggest issue. So does Wesley Fofana solve that then, Michael?
Well, you look at the names that we mentioned before, Fofana, Cucurella and Koulibaly. I mean, 3 out the 4 biggest fees that they've spent, 3 defenders. So you can see where his priorities are. They did lose some real key players, the likes of Rudiger, in the summer. So they lost key players, so they've had to, try to replace them. But you'd probably expected them to lose a player or 2 as well to recoup some of the money. And in attacking areas, they had lots of them. Remember, they brought Raheem Sterling in as well. But they seem to just be adding players without selling them at the moment. And Chelsea have got a habit of that. I mean, they've got such a big squad. And then you look further down into their academy or their under-23s, and it's brimming with talent as well. They've got so many players out on loan. So it's a huge, huge squad, huge wage bill that they've got there. But they carry a lot of value in it as well, and I'm sure they'll have to do some trimming in the future to recoup some of that money.
Yeah, well, speaking of players leaving Chelsea, we're hearing that the Marcos Alonso side of that Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang swap deal, that part of it is done. So we'll keep you up to date on anything we hear about the Aubameyang side of things, but that is looking like it's more than likely now that Aubameyang will be wearing Chelsea colours come the end of the weekend. Right, let's talk Liverpool now and their transfer business. In the last 40 minutes or so, they confirmed the loan deal for Arthur from Juventus. So what does he bring to Liverpool?
Well, we haven't seen him play much in recent years.
You're not keen, are you?
It's not that I'm not keen. He's technically gifted, there's no doubt, but I don't think he's a player made particularly for the Premier League and for the intensity and the physicality of the game, and especially the way this Liverpool side play or usually plays. under Jurgen Klopp. So for me, he's a body. They needed another midfielder because of all the injuries and all the problems that they've had in this department so far this season. But I don't think he moved the needle that much. I don't think he will add much. He's not a game changer, for example. We were discussing it with Karen before, but he's a player like Thiago Alcantara, but obviously not at the level of Thiago Alcantara. But I guess on certain games or towards the end of games, he can do a job. The last time he was at Anfield, there was the 4-0 defeat with Barcelona. The last time he was at Chelsea, he lost 4-0 with Juventus. So I guess England already is not the best of destinations for him.
Not a very good omen, that, is it?
Sorry, Liv.
Karen, do you think that Liverpool's problems so far this season, because they haven't got off to the best start either in this campaign, has it been in the midfield?
Yeah, you obviously missed the injuries, but I just feel like the back line hasn't been where it's been previously, and it's never about one player, but I just think so much emphasis runs through Van Dijk, and I just don't feel like he's been himself. And then you're right, then it goes into the midfield. So I think there's issues between the back line and the midfield. Usually they're kind of so solid. Haven't quite seen that yet, but I'm not pinning it on Van Dijk, but he's so influential and he doesn't seem himself, and I think then that kind of rubs off with the rest of the team.
Liverpool's business overall, what do you think, Michael? How do you sum it up? Obviously, Darwin Núñez, a player that joined in the summer. We haven't seen too much of him after his red card, but he'll be back this weekend for the Merseyside derby.
He will, but he's basically been the replacement, hasn't he, for Sadio Mane? So, you know, I think Liverpool fans will be thinking, well, yeah, we lose a big player and we've got one. So, and then looking elsewhere, I know midfield players has just been at the forefront of every fan has been screaming at it for months and months now. It really is a troublesome area for Liverpool, and you think the players that they've either got really young, inexperienced players that could be very good in the future, or they've got really ageing players that are coming to end of contracts, or some injury-prone players, let's say, in the likes of Keita. They're desperate for a top midfielder. I think they've got a world-class one in Fabinho, but apart from that, as I say, they've either got young, unproven, or older players that possibly can't play 90 minutes on a regular basis anymore. And they've got a mishmash of, 7, 8 players there in midfield. They've got a lot of injuries, as I say, coming to the end of their career. They probably need to go wallop and go and get someone like Jude Bellingham. Now, I'm sure, and Jules will know probably more than me, but I'm pretty sure that they fancy him, but I don't think Dortmund would sell Haaland and him at the same time. So I think they might have to keep the powder dry until next summer for that one. But I know that they're definitely interested.
Yeah, what a player Jude Bellingham is. What can you tell us about him likely to leave Dortmund? Obviously not in this window now, but maybe in January or next summer?
I think next summer, yeah. And I think that's the dream for Liverpool. I think it would be the dream for a lot of clubs, including Real Madrid, for example, to continue rebuilding their midfield. It's 120 million or 150 million even for Jude Bellingham. This is the price. And I think he's worth, again, every penny because he's a game changer. Arthur is not so much. Jude Bellingham, if you can afford him, and I'm sure this is the plan for next summer for Liverpool, and he should be. He has to be. Him or someone like Declan Rice, someone like that.
Karen, you were telling me about Jude Bellingham years ago, weren't you? Raving about him as a youngster at Birmingham.
Well, if we get a sell-on fee as well, I'll be absolutely buzzing. We need the money, so yeah, it'd be great. But yeah, what a top player. He ran the show at like 16 at Birmingham, and to do what he's done, I'm not surprised, and he can go on to another level.
Should Liverpool have done more in this window then, Jules? They were linked with Lucas Paqueta, who became West Ham's club record signing just yesterday for the London side. Why didn't they get him? What was wrong with that deal for Liverpool? No,
I think the whole budget went on Darwin Núñez. I mean, again, you pay the price. They really wanted him. He was also Julian Ward, the new sporting director's first deal, and I think he really wanted to make it also to impress and to say, look, I can do a good job here. This is a player that Jurgen Klopp wants. The club has been chasing. At some point, it looked like it might not happen. And Julian Ward, who worked before with Benfica and knows the club really well, went in and made that deal happen. It just cost them the whole budget. And after that, you've got a bit of money for Calvin Ramsey, who's a good right-back second option after Trent. But then there was nothing left. And I think maybe, now with hindsight, it's easier to say, but maybe you could have done 50 on a striker and 50 on a midfielder, and you'd be better off right now than the whole 100 million on Darwin. OK, well, plenty more to discuss from this summer transfer window. The former Arsenal man, Emeric Aubamyang, looks like he's going to be back in the Premier League at Chelsea. But it's the current Arsenal man, Jesus, that we're going to be talking about next.